Sensible Sentencing Trust is delivering a petition. Wow, okay, all right. Tomorrow, calling for a revamp of the law that allowed 2 people convicted of the manslaughter of taupo toddler Moko Raieto Herere to plead guilty to manslaughter rather than murder. It was a case that kind of shocked the nation. A young kid that was tortured over some time. He died. I want to go around the panel first and say, when you heard about this case, what was the first thing that went through your mind, Penny?
I thought about all the other kids who have suffered the same fate and was really sad about it.
Yeah.
Todd?
I thought it was absolutely gut-wrenching, actually. It was a real shock. Yeah.
What about you, Tracy?
Well, I just thought again, James, Lily being again, another one, yeah.
What about you, David Seymour?
Well, before anything went through my mind, it turned my stomach. I mean, it was absolutely gut-wrenching, as Todd said.
So here we go. Attorney General Chris Finlayson said that there was a significant risk that Moko's torturers wouldn't be convicted if they were charged with murder. What do you think? What do you think, Todd?
Well, I think it's an interesting case, really. I mean, plea bargaining isn't rife within our system at all.
It's more of an American system, isn't it?
If you look at that case, as the Attorney General pointed out, there was there's a high threshold that had to be met, so they had to go through, the Solicitor General had to sign off the agreement, and also there were some really key details of that case that might not have come out, which might not have resulted in any prosecutions at all.
It just feels outrageous.
So
This kid tortured. I mean, how can it have been manslaughter?
Yeah, I know, and I think, looking at it, it seemed like a technicality around some rules around evidence, and the thing was, if had that agreement not been reached, those guys might have walked free.
Okay, David, what did he make of it? Manslaughter?
Look, I wasn't in the court. I wasn't the judge. I didn't see the facts before me.
Your gut feeling, what is it? What do you make of this?
My gut feeling is that it's gut-wrenching and he should have got murder. But the fact of the matter is, let's just be serious about this for a moment. I wasn't there. I didn't have the evidence presented to me. I didn't have the briefing note that the prosecution service had.
All right.
And I think we have to respect they actually made a call, they secured a conviction, and they got him a long sentence.
The Justice for Moko petition, the Justice for Moko petition, would you sign it?
Sorry, you say that again?
The Justice for Moko petition, would you sign it?
Look, I haven't been asked to sign it, but I might if I was asked.
What about you, Tracy? Would you sign it?
Absolutely. And so I want to go into this. First of all, let's be clear. The plea bargaining or the ability to actually trade down charges is something new. So let's be clear. That was a deliberate act. And there's another way to do this. There is actually the opportunity to change the law so that juries can decide if they don't have the evidence for murder, but murder's the original charge, that they then go down to manslaughter. There's other ways to do this.
All right. They got 17 years, though, Penny. That's a huge sentence, anyway.
Look, mate, I take
got
off
17 years.
I take off my MP hat and put on my father hat. It's just not long enough for me. As a dad, that really breaks my heart, and I'd like to see him locked up. That's how I feel as a dad, and I'm sure a lot of Kiwis feel that way.
Okay, interesting. Let's go to Hayley.
Yes, I'm here with Scott Guthrie and David Garrett from the Sensible Sentencing Trust. First, David, you wanted to clarify something that Tracy Martin was saying.
Tracy, the statement that plea bargaining is new is not in fact right.
Oh, okay.
It's what has changed is that under the rules put in place by Mr. Finlayson over the road in 2013 mean that the Crown can now initiate those discussions. That's what's changed.
Thank you.
It's always been part of a defence lawyer's job to try and get the charges against his or her client reduced. That's perfectly part of our system, although people may not like it. But now, the Crown can initiate that. Right. And we don't know whether that happened in this case because no one's talking. No one's talking.
Can I ask you, why did the Crown initiate it? Do you think it's something to do with funding?
Look, I frankly don't know. What I do know is that I have consulted 3 criminal defence barristers who between them have got 60 years' experience. All 3 said, if the facts are as we see, and they were, one guy said this would not have touched the sides in front of a jury. In other words, a jury would have found them guilty of murder, no question. All 3 said this is inexplicable. And frankly, the statement that Finlayson released, it raises far more questions than it answers. And it is, at the very least, disingenuous and misleading.
Scott, I'm going to ask you, is 17 years a sensible sentence?
You've got to remember, it's not 17 years. It's 9 years minimum non-parole.
Correct.
They had available to them 20 years. So 20 years would have fitted the regime, not 9 years. and they will not serve that 17 years. That's what we're on about. Simple.
Do you think it helps to be locked up in jail? Is that going to actually rehabilitate someone?
Well, no, locking up in jail is not going to rehabilitate them, but we need to have rehabilitation in jails, and we don't have that at the moment either.
Okay, we don't, definitely do. Do you think we need to outlaw this plea deal?
Yeah, what the petition says is that two things. Firstly, that Crown-initiated plea bargaining should be outlawed, which was the status quo until 2013. Secondly, and more importantly, that deals like this need to be signed off by a judge. The judge in Rotorua, Justice Katz, did all she could. She did all she could, and reading between the lines as a lawyer of her sentencing notes, she hated the deal, but she had no option. She was presented with a deal where the Crown said these guys have been charged with manslaughter and have pleaded guilty. That's it. She could do nothing about that, no matter how much she didn't like it. Now, I believe if Justice Katz had been looking at that decision, she would have said, to hell with that.
Well, to hell with that, and back to you, Wallace.
Just actually, this whole plea bargaining, the whole idea of plea bargaining, and the hands up in the audience, just get the cameras to the audience. Does it have a place in New Zealand society? Hands up who don't think that plea bargaining has a place in this country. There's a few, and hands up those who do, if plea bargaining is okay. By the defence. There's a few there. What do you make? Do you think it's got a place?
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting point. I mean, as you say, it's not just a deal between two lawyers. It has to get signed off by the Solicitor General, the head of Crown Law. And this is a perfect case in point, whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing to do. Though the fact of the matter is, if an agreement hadn't have been reached, based on what I've seen, and obviously I wasn't sitting in the court, though there might not have been a prosecution.
Is it about? Do you think it's about cost?
Yeah,
is this the result?
No, I don't think it's anything to do with
Is this
cost.
the result of
No.
reducing cost because of pressures on Crown law? What do you reckon, Penny?
Yeah, I do think it has a little bit to do with that, because what we've seen throughout the whole judicial system, there have been cutbacks. We've seen legal aid and a whole heap of tinkering going on there, and I think it will have a flow-on effect, and that's what we're seeing.
All right. I just want to sort of jump in, because the crowd's sort of pretty wild about this one. Hayley, jump into the audience there. What do they make? Do you reckon that plea bargaining's got a place in New Zealand society?
Someone over here was very vocal. Here we go. Do you agree with plea bargaining?
Hell no. Why? It's wrong. Why? Why do it?
Well, maybe they might not have been done for murder. They might not have thought they could win the case.
Look at the facts. Look at the facts before you go in behind those closed doors.
Do you think people should just be locked up, or maybe even, do you want to bring back the death sentence?
Moko's locked up in a coffin. He's locked up in a coffin right now. Not behind closed doors. Where's his bargain? Where's Moko's right? Where's all our kids' rights? I don't care about them being locked up behind prison bars. These kids shouldn't be behind coffins.
It's a very emotive subject, Wallace.
What, Tracy, would you want us to respond to that?
Yeah, I just want to say also that justice must be seen to be done. And I think that young lady made a really good point about behind closed doors. Justice must be done, it must be timely, and it must be seen to be done. And that means we must all know how that decision was reached.
Penny, you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's got to be transparent, and we've got to have faith in the system.
Just out of interest, before we go, do you guys take notice as MPs of such organisations as the Sensible Sentencing Trust? Do you take notice of them, David?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, ACT and David Garrett over there implemented the three strikes law with a lot of help from Sensible Sentencing Trust, and I think civil society groups are an important part of our
Tracy,
democracy.
Martin, do you take notice of groups like the
I do.
Sensible
I
Sentencing
take notice
Trust?
of anybody that sends me their opinion into my email address.
What
I read
about
it.
you? Take notice of groups like that?
Absolutely, and I think this case is actually. I'd be surprised if we don't start to see a wider conversation going forward.
And you, what about you? Do you take notice of groups like that?
Sensible messages resonate with me, and that's a sensible message.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Hey, your thoughts on this at Backbenders TV. We're back next. Is it time for rugby to up the respect for women?